Four patch is such a basic quilting block, and we all know how to make it. Yet it gets just so frustrating when it doesn't work, when it takes ages to finish your four patches and then they end up being too small, wobbly, or not on point. I'm Rugile from Magical Dreams. In this video, I will share my tips on how to make the four patches quickly, easily, perfect, and on point every single time. Let's get started. For the four patches, you will need fabric squares that are at least half an inch larger than the finished block. If your seam allowance, however, does not always turn out to be perfect, make the squares 3/4 of an inch larger than the finished block. This way you allow some space for an error. Split the blocks into groups according to their color and darkness. I split in pinks and other fabrics. Fabrics from the two groups will contrast each other in the finished block. Start making the four patches by taking a square from each group, put the squares right sides together and stitch them using 1/4 inch seam allowance. Chain piece for speed. After you join the fabrics on one side, go ahead and stitch them on the opposite side as well. Chain piecing without cutting the block separate speeds up the process quite a bit. Once all the blocks are sewn together on two opposite sides, don't rush to clip them apart. First, cut the blocks in half. For that, slice the blocks straight in the middle between the two stitch lines. Keeping the blocks together allows you to cut everything much faster, plus it helps you to maintain the right order of fabrics and to not get anything mixed up. Now press the blocks open. While doing so, make a mental note of one of the two colors, preferably the darker one, and make sure it is always on top. I picked up pink and pressed open the blocks to the pink fabric. Now clip the blocks apart and put them into a pile. Keep fabrics from one group always in the same position, like I put pinks always on top. Now repeat the same procedure with the second strip of blocks. First, press them open to the same side as before. I press it to the pink fabric. Then clip the blocks loose and put them into a second pile. Again, I keep my pinks on top. Next, sew the blocks from the two piles together. For a scrappy look, make sure the fabrics on both blocks are not identical. Put the blocks right sides together and carefully nest the seams. I can't stress this enough. Nest the seams if you want them to end up on point. If you pressed all your blocks to fabrics from a single group, to pinks in my case, the seams will always nest well and you will end up with nicely checkered blocks. Once all the blocks are joined together, press open the blocks and clip them separate. Repeat the same procedure of joining the ends until all the blocks are sewn together into a single long strip of checkered fabrics. If your initial fabric squares were half an inch larger than the finished block, the width of the resulting strip should be equal to the width of the finished block. This extra half of an inch was used up for seam allowances. Yet, if you are like me, there might be some deviations from this value due to inaccuracies at one step or another. Thus, I used fabric squares that were 3/4 of an inch larger than the size of the finished block. This leaves me with an extra 1/4 inch that I can trim off the blocks. This way, I can correct all the imperfections. I find it very easy to trim off at this stage. Just position your ruler along the seam in the middle and measure half of the final block size to the side. Go through the entire length of a strip on one side and then repeat on the other side. There you can double check with the ruler also at the edge of the strip for it to be equal to the final width of the finished block. Now you have a perfect strip with a correct width throughout the length. Finally, just slice the strip into four patches. For this, align the ruler both to the short vertical seam and to the horizontal seam in the middle of the strip. This way you make sure that the four patch is not tilted. Trim on both sides of the four patch, first measuring from the middle and then from the edge of this block. So here you have it, quick and perfect four patches. Hopefully this tutorial provided you with some useful tips on how to optimize your 4-patch making routine and how to make them quickly, easily, and perfect every single time. See you in the next video. Bye!